This is CBS News Bay Area with Elizabeth Cook.
We've gone from turning a dial to pushing buttons to tapping a screen. Now it looks like the end could be near for the landline altogether.
It's truly our lifeline.
But what if that's your only reliable way to reach people?
When everything else goes bad in an emergency, or even if people don't have internet or a cell phone, you can always get 911 on a landline.
Is this just a sign of the times, or will it leave communities cut off? Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Elizabeth Cook. This afternoon, we are tapping into a phone conversation. The move by some providers to discontinue their landline services altogether. We'll hear from Bay Area residents who say they'll be disconnected in case of an emergency. We're also going to be joined by a Bay Area County Supervisor who is pushing to keep the landlines. And we'll ask AT&T what's behind the potential change. All right, Jess, thanks. Tomorrow, the public can weigh in for the last time on AT&T's move to stop landline service here in California. While some families have ditched theirs already, others say it's still their lifeline. Our Lorene Ayub headed to the San Mateo County coastline, where some are worried about getting cut off.
Landlines may appear to be a service of the past, but many populations continue to rely on them. I'm in Moss Beach, where one family says, for them, a landline really is a lifeline. Remember these? Well, it's not just a vintage rotary phone. It is a fully functioning landline telephone.
Okay, Bill. We'll see you when you get
It's
here.
the kind of connection Glenn Eastman of Moss Beach relies upon heavily, with cellular service in his area constantly being weak. In fact, according to PC Mag, his coastal neighborhood in nearby Montera has been voted as one of the worst cellular dead zones in the United States. And Glenn, well, he's fed up. He not only needs landlines for emergencies, but as a professional editor, he needs strong internet connection to do his job each day.
When everything else goes bad in an emergency, or even if people don't have internet or a cell phone, you can always get 911 on a landline.
Well, that backup plan is changing. In response to an FCC order, AT&T, along with other providers, will be phasing out landline services soon. But with AT&T's recent nationwide cellular outage affecting thousands of customers, Glenn says it is a poignant reminder of the continued need for landlines.
This is the familiar sound of dial tone, which everybody knows. It's been in existence for years and years and years. And it's truly our lifeline.
Glenn is disappointed and says people in his community feel forgotten.
I would say to AT&T that they're giving up their responsibility to loyal customers who've been with them for years and years and years.
And while they await the claims of fiber optic cable being provided in the area, Glenn says his community has awaited that promise for 30 years. In response, AT&T has provided the following statement to CBS, emphasizing that voice and 911 service do continue to be accessible. In the meantime, Glenn has considered moving out of the area for better overall connection. But he has a personal attachment to his Moss Beach home.
My grandfather and my father built the place.
So you'd like to keep your connection here?
Absolutely. It's a legacy house. I want to stay here.
A hope for loyal service, even as times change.
Well, the California Communication Workers Union, which represents telecom employees, is urging the PUC to reject AT&T's effort to cut landline services. And several communities are pushing back as well. We'll hear from a Bay Area County Supervisor who is joining us live in studio. That's next. It is a sign of the times. Some phone providers are considering getting rid of their landline services. But what if that's your only reliable way to call out? Joining me now is San Mateo County Supervisor Ray Mueller. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I got to ask you, do you have a landline?
At my home, no, I don't have a landline.
Okay. Now, you come from San Mateo County, which is a very diverse range of residents, right? You have people living in bigger cities and bigger towns, and then you have folks living in more remote areas. So what are the concerns from some of those people who may be worried that my landline's my only connection to the outside world. I don't have a cell phone, or not a reliable one at least.
Yeah, so it really becomes into play when you live in an area that's rural or semi-rural. In those areas, you don't have a reliable power grid, and that's what we see on the San Mateo County coast. I myself live in Menlo Park. Our power grid's pretty reliable. It has many different interconnection points. When you live on the San Mateo County coast, you can be without power for sometimes weeks in a natural hazard event. And that really is the dependency that's causing this issue. Right now, if you look at the San Mateo County coast and the South Coast, we do not have a reliable cellular network. There are many areas where there are dead spots, some areas where there's no network at all. Similarly, we don't have a reliable internet network. There are some areas where there's absolutely no fiber. Now imagine if on the San Mateo County coast, somehow incredibly, that cellular network was completely built out and that fiber network was built out. Still wouldn't solve the problem, because the issue, the dependency, is the power grid. And the power grid, if that goes out, people won't be able to reach out. And the big issue is that with those landlines, that landline is powered from a generation point far away from that local outage. They do it at the generation point and then it travels out. So that landline stays active even in those power outages. And that really is the issue that we face. At the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors and at the county right now, we're trying to solve for those public safety emergencies. We really depend on those landlines, especially in natural hazard events, but even in those day-to-day emergency events. We have many people living who are seniors, access and functional needs issues. They need to be able to reach out to us.
Sure.
And we need to be able to reach out to them.
Yeah, no question. You know, the other side of this, though, is the argument that this is a sign of the times. Everybody has a cell phone these days, and the connection is getting better. I mean, you yourself admit you don't even have a landline. A lot of people don't. So do you see the argument there that a lot of folks may be saying, well, maybe if the resources aren't put to the landlines, they're put to better cell service? Is that an option?
No. And I don't see the argument, frankly, because the fact of the matter is we aren't all on cell phones. We aren't, and in some areas, I know it's hard to believe for those who live in urban areas, but if there are many areas that don't have reliable cell phone service, they don't have reliable internet service, and they don't have reliable power service. And in those areas, these landlines are an absolutely lifeline for people living there.
So give me an update on where you are in terms of voting on this, decisions being made. The PUC meets tomorrow, but you guys meet again next week, correct?
Yeah, we're meeting again next week. So this happened over a series of 3 meetings. In our first meeting, we actually met and we considered giving AT&T a subpoena to go ahead and try to gain information about where there was less than adequate cellular connectivity on the coast, and really looking at maps, trying to figure out what the infrastructure looked like. AT&T asked us to go ahead and hold off on those subpoenas, and they came in and met with the County Department of Emergency Management, with our technology folks, and then we actually brought them in and they testified in the hearing to a lot of the things we talked about in those one-on-one meetings with staff. After that meeting, where we took testimony from AT&T, the board voted to go ahead and move forward with the resolution on behalf of the county to consider opposing, on behalf of the board, AT&T's request to the CPUC. Independent of that, the county has already taken a position. So our Department of Emergency Management, our Department of Technology, the County Executive's Office have looked at this, and the county's already taken a position against the request on behalf of AT&T to the CPUC. I myself, as a county supervisor, have sent a letter actually co-signed by Congresswoman Anna Eshoo opposing this as well. So
before we go to break, though, if landlines go away in your county, does the county have a plan B for these folks?
At this point, that's one of the reasons why we met with them. We're trying to figure out, is there a possible plan B that will go ahead and provide the connectivity necessary for the public health and safety of our residents living in those areas? And right now, we don't.
Right.
The hard part is over 26 years ago, AT&T asked for this monopoly. And they've had this monopoly since then, and they've controlled this infrastructure since then. And even though they say they have competitors in this area, the competitors are actually using a different technology. The technology that we rely on as that carrier of last resort, that safety net, is an AT&T technology, and there's nothing that can replace it right now.
All right, Ray Mueller, keep you updated on
Thank
everything
you.
that's happening.
I appreciate it.
All right, coming up, we're going to talk live with a representative from AT&T about these concerns that we just mentioned as the company aims to leave landline service behind.
Here's the deal. I feel like they come with immense sports knowledge, okay?
What's a bracket even look like? Does it go vertical, sideways?
If I know Juliet, she probably has a bet on this tournament.
We're winning money in this, right? Or not money?
Matt and Vern have no chance against Liz.
She's won this thing 3 times.
I wish everything in my life worked like this.
Arizona or Purdue?
I stand no chance against the dark. Paul, maybe.
The tournament is coming. Play along with our team at kpix.com.
Several Bay Area counties are pushing back on a proposal by phone providers like AT&T to stop landline service here in California. They say losing that connection will leave them vulnerable. Joining me live now is Teddy Verhees, Vice President of External Affairs for AT&T California. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
Well, what's behind AT&T's potential removal of landline services here in California?
So AT&T is looking to retire its copper network. It's been around for over 140 years, and we are looking to we're at the early stages of beginning to transition the copper network over to more advanced services. So we have what we used to have is 15 million customers on this network, and we have less than 500,000 today, residential customers. So we're looking to be able to transfer these customers, this 5% that's left on the copper network, over to a more advanced secure network like fiber or wireless where it would be appropriate.
You know, a lot of folks, especially those that live in more remote areas, are worried that this move would jeopardize public safety in the event of an emergency where those wireless services aren't available. What's your response to that?
Right. So it's really important, if I can make sure that everybody understands, that we are going to continue to provide existing voice service for as long as it's needed. And that is particularly in those areas where there may only be AT&T landline service available to a customer. So we know that we have some areas in California that are rural or more remote, and it's important that we make sure to protect those customers and continue to provide that service and until there is an alternative with us or another provider that becomes available for them.
You know, in a lot of those remote areas, too, sometimes there are dead zones and cell phone service isn't that great. If you remove the landline option, does that mean that cell phone service is going to get better? Is it going to improve? No more of those dead zones?
So we're always looking to upgrade our wireless network. We put billions of dollars into it every year just here in the state of California, but we recognize that it is not a seamless network yet. And we have a lot more work to do with local jurisdictions as well as the state to make sure that we can deploy those wireless cell antennas to be sure that we can cover the areas that don't have it today.
I'm curious.
So where there is, sorry.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Where there is no coverage, where there is no alternative for a customer who is on the landline network today, so on the copper network today, if there is no alternative, they're going to continue to keep that landline until there is something that is equal to or better for them to transition to. So if the wireless network is not equal to or better for their landline service, there will not be considered an alternative for that landline service today.
All right. Teddy Verhees with AT&T California. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, in the meantime, what do you do if that service does come to an end? We check out a potential alternative from one Bay Area company. And remember, you can watch us anytime, anywhere on our streaming service, CBS News Bay Area. Catch all of our live newscasts plus news and weather updates throughout the day. You can find us on the free CBS News app or on Pluto TV.
Positive energy is so important for us to do what we do every single morning. And like a family, we're building each other up. How can we get the best Reed? How can we get the best Gianna? And of course, the best Jessica and Nicole. I just want to make sure that every single day our viewers tune in and they're getting something authentic, genuine, and real. What you see on air, that's me, that's Reed, that's Gianna. That's who we are when the lights are turned off.
Wake up with a morning edition. Weekdays on Pix Plus.
So what if AT&T does pull landline service? What can residents do? Well, a company based in Silicon Valley called Ooma is pitching themselves as an alternative. They told us today about their technology, which cuts the copper.
There's no landline required. It's all through the internet. It's called Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP. That's the technical term that you sometimes hear thrown around.
Well, they say customers would have the same 911 service as with a landline, and you could even keep your landline phone number. They say there's also a backup battery in case of power outages. So we checked their website, and their products start at about $100. Well, thank you so much for joining us for today's conversation on landlines. So what do you think? Do you have a landline still? Do you think it's a necessary service, or is this a thing of the past? We'd like to hear from you. Post your thoughts online using the hashtag KPIX, and we'll be following the developments tomorrow. CBS Evening News is next right here on KPIX. Local news continues on our streaming service, CBS News Bay Area. I'll see you at 5 o'clock.